Hi, everyone. This is just a quick video to talk about something which I have heard a lot of people bring up, and I think it's worth mentioning on its own because it's such a prevalent topic. When we think about what it's like to live a life free from identification, we have this idea that it's going to be the annihilation of everything. We have this idea that everything that we take to be our world, the people who we love, our job, our friends, our family, the whole universe that we see every day, all of that will be annihilated because we have this idea that the it must be my creation. I must be the one seeing and hearing and tasting and smelling and touching and interpreting all of these things. And if you get rid of the me who is doing all of this seeing and interpreting, then of course, what could possibly be there? Everything else has to dissolve with it. And that's the erroneous conception. So when we have this idea of what it's going to be like post awakening or post lack of identification, we will often see this just black blank void. And in the middle of that black blank void, there is still this kernel of awareness because the mind is fantasizing what it must be like. And it's creating this idea of this fantasy because it has always put itself in the center of every experience. As far as the mind's concerned, this sense of self has to be here. In every moment of your life, it has been putting this in the center of everything. It has been deciding that the world is all around us in a 360-degree bubble, and we are that little minute centrality in the middle of it. So, of course, if we imagine that that it takes to make the whole world disappears, then of course the entire world must disappear with it. But the problem is that the mind still believes, still assumes that there must be an awareness there that is still hovering somewhere in the middle of this absolute expansive void with no center. And yet we still see ourselves as the center of this centerless void. So, what I would like you to do is to reverse this because the inverse of that is true. It's not that there is an absolute black void with this small kernel of awareness at the center. It's that without identification, absolutely everything exists. Everything that is here right now is still here. The difference is that there is no one who is inside of the center of this experience who needs to find something to cling to keep safe, to make something happen. There is simply the raw experience of sights and sounds and tastes and smells and physical sensations. And the mind can't grasp that. It can't have the world where things spontaneously appear, where the sights just are known by the visual field itself, where there's nothing separate from it, where there's nothing separate from any of the sense fields. The mind isn't used to that being a possibility. And so it's constantly trying to create an imagination of what it could be like, where it still maintains that central belief, that core belief in some sort of awareness, some sort of self in the middle of it all. And of course, that is going to spring up a whole bunch of fear because if you feel like there is still something here that I take to be me, and now I'm annihilating everything in existence except for this core me that I've been trying to get rid of for so many years. Of course, that would be terrifying, but it's not the way it is at all. That me was never there to begin with. You're not getting rid of anything. The only thing that you're getting rid of, if we could speak of it like that, is that there's no longer a belief in something that was believed to be there and no longer is. And though we really don't want to instill new beliefs, sometimes it's useful to entertain an alternate idea or an alternate viewpoint if one that you have been utilizing tends to be problematic for you, causing suffering, making your life more difficult, based entirely on an illusory imagination. And this is one of those cases. So if you're somebody who has had a fear of losing the identity, letting go because you don't know what's going to be on the other side of it. And I know that the unknown can be scary. We thrive on certainty. We thrive on knowing what comes next. There are people who read the end of a book, the end of a novel, before they've read the book just to find out how it ends, because they need to know that it has a happy ending. There are people who watch spoiler alerts before watching a movie just to make sure that things are going to turn out okay. This is really the way that so many of us navigate through life. And this is about being able to relax because we cannot let go of identification if we're clinging to something. If we're clinging for assurance or safety, if we're clinging to know anything at all, ultimately it's just a binding that keeps us stuck in this suffering, this endless cycle of selfing and selfing and selfing. So I ask you to try to entertain the idea that instead of there being the possibility of an absolute void on the other side of awakening, or the other side of seeing through self, or the other side of losing whatever bit of identification you're still clinging to. It might be the first fetter, that belief in the identification with thoughts and body. It might be the sixth fetter, where we feel like we are still separate from everything else because there is still some witnesser who's like behind the eyes or in the chest or somewhere in here, separate from this whole panorama out there. Or it might be the eighth fetter, where I still believe that I am everything. I am the cosmos, God, consciousness, awareness. I am, I am, I am, I am. As long as there is a belief in that being the case, there might be an experience where it feels very true, and that's fine. It's great. Enjoy it. But if it feels like it becomes an identity, if it's something else that you cling to for the use of staying in this safe space, because there's a possibility that on the other side of that, if you let go of it, you might be losing something. If there's a belief that on the other side of that, there might be this void of annihilation, then this is what I would like for you to entertain. That there is no way for that void of annihilation to appear. If it did, there would have to be somebody in there who was aware of it. There would have to be somebody who was acknowledging it, who could compare this black void to memories of everything that they once knew and loved. And that just simply cannot be, because there is no one there and there is no awareness. That itself is an illusion. The way that it can be experienced is that absolutely everything exists all the time, right now, in this moment, that has no beginning or end. And there is nothing separate in it. There is no awareness separately, nestled inside of it, aware of anything separate from it. It is simply everything being aware of itself all at once in this moment. And there's nothing to cling to because there's nothing that has to have things a certain way. There's nothing that needs for things to not change because change is inevitable. Impermanence is inevitable. Even within this, there is a consistency that can be comforting, but we don't even want to cling to that. We don't want to come down on any side of anything. We just simply want to see that what is here is what is here, and that there doesn't need to be something implied in the middle of it that is taking it in, seeing it, feeling it, hearing it, smelling it, tasting it, and then making something out of it. It is just what is appearing. And you don't need to worry about there being some black expanse on the other side of any sort of awakening shift or insight. All that will be there is what has always been there, minus the illusory belief in something else that's being added onto it. The family is still there. The love is still there. Maybe even less hindered because there's less belief in me needing to get something out of them, me needing to be a certain way for them, or them needing to be a certain way for me to be okay. All of this is what can become new and fresh and different and, in a sense, improved, though we really don't want to look at it like we're doing this for improvement, but as a much more open, expansive, easy way of being when you're not bound to identification. And so if that feeling of fear arises and those thoughts of this unknown and the darkness and the void come in, see if you can turn that around and recognize that what you're imagining is the exact opposite of the way things really are. See if you can instead picture absolutely everything right here, just without that central point, taking it all in and making it all about itself. Nothing means anything to anybody. It is simply showing up, and it is simply disappearing again to be replaced by something new and fresh and beautiful and wonderful. That's it. So let go of that fear. It's okay to just let go of any of the anticipatory thoughts about what might be on the other side of any shift, because the mind doesn't know. It's just postulating based on ideas of the way that it's always navigated the world and assuming that, of course, it's going to be functioning in the same way going forward. But it's not, because it wasn't the way things were. It was always operating out of an illusion. So you can be free from that illusion. And in that freedom, not be floating in an absolute void, but here amongst everything, as you have always been, with no unnecessary attachments or complications added to it. Just simply the way things are. So I hope that you found this helpful or resonant if you're somebody who has had these kind of fears, these kind of thoughts and anticipations about what it might be like and trepidation about going forward with inquiry or meditation. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you soon. Yeah, much love.